just start now. All right, so first and foremost, welcome everyone to the final session of the Oxford FinTech and Legal Tech Society's speaker series. All right, and today we have the deepest honor of having Dr. Mimi Zhou as well as Akshay from the Oxford Deep Tech Dispute Resolution Lab. And they are going to be presenting on the project that they've been working really hard on, which is the Lawtech and Sustainable Development, a new agenda project that Dr. Mimi Zhou is currently heading. All right. Yep, so just to give everyone an overview of what's happening today. Okay, so first off, we'll just do a very short presentation of the society as well as Dr. Mimi, following which Dr. Mimi and Akshay would give a presentation about the project. And last but not least, we'll end up with a question and answer session. So today we expect that we'll have quite a bit of time for question and answer, and we hope to keep this a more formal, more informal, discursive session. So everyone feel free to unmute yourselves or type any questions that you have into the chat. Yeah, so the Oxford FinTech and Legal Society was founded in 2017, and so far we've not just been doing seminars and workshops like this one, but we have also been working on various research projects, networking sessions, and so on and so forth. We've had a gradual build-up of members over the past few years, and we're really excited to host exciting events for you guys in the terms coming forward. Now, moving on, I think let me just do a quick introduction of our distinguished speaker today, who is Dr. Mimi Zhou. Dr. Mimi is the co-founder and principal investigator of the Oxford Deep Tech Dispute Resolution Lab, and also the Director of Studies in Law at Regent's Park College. Her lab is a leading hub of interdisciplinary and multi-stakeholder cooperation aimed at advancing the study of deep technologies in dispute resolution. Dr. Zhou is also a member of the World Economic Forum Experts Network in areas of China justice and blockchain, World Bank's Access to Justice and Technology Task Force, and the UniDroit Working Group on Digital Assets and Private Law. Her research has won international awards and been covered by international media outlets. Dr. Zhou is a qualified lawyer in Australia and England and Wales, with over 17 years of experience working for and advising international organizations, government departments, and firms in tech and professional services sectors in China, Europe, US, and Australia, Asia. Right, Dr. Mimi, I think I will hand the time to you now.
Thanks very much, Tian, and thank you very much to the Oxford FinTech and Legal Tech Society for hosting myself and Akshay today. It's a real pleasure to be able to draw on the research that our lab at Oxford has been doing over the past few months on a really exciting area that's very close to my heart. Actually, two areas, the first being law tech and the second being sustainable development. I've worked in sustainable development for over a decade in various roles at the UN and in the public and private sector. So it's been great to be able to really marry this kind of old love with my new love, which has really been law tech for the last few years as I developed this lab in Oxford, and really to see the synergies between these two very important areas of public policy, and to see whether there could be the intersection between law tech and sustainable development goals can actually be a new agenda for the legal sector, for the legal tech ecosystem that obviously goes beyond the legal sector, and also globally, whether such an agenda could actually garner the sort of support that we're seeing in terms of sustainable finance and the prominence that the SDGs have gained in the area of fintech. So I think it's a great forum, the FinTech and Legal Tech Society, to really try and draw on the studies that we're doing and present to you today some of the preliminary findings that we have found. So actually, before I go into the preliminary findings, I might just give an introduction to the SDG goals. I mean, because you're here, I'm assuming you know what they are. It is not an easy sell sometimes in terms of, I know colleagues in the field have been trying to promote SDGs among the legal profession. There seems to be still limited awareness of the SDGs. Like, people might have heard of it, but you know, it certainly has more profile than the previous Millennium Development Goals, the MDGs, which has been surprising to find that actually not many people have heard of them. But the SDG definitely has a greater profile, and sort of from our research, it shows that people do care about them in the legal sector, but there's been a lag in terms of what we should be doing in the legal sector, legal profession, to be promoting these SDGs. These are 17 SDGs that have been developed by the UN from a really extensive consultation, a global consultation that they did. They even went to the most remote parts of the world to get people's views on what are the most important things for them in their lives. And so there are 17 goals, and not all goals come to mind immediately when we think about Lawtech or even the legal sector, what this sector can do to achieve these goals. But these goals are all interconnected. And so, you know, a very important goal for the legal sector is goal 16, which is about promoting peace, justice, and strong institutions. And that includes access to justice. So that's a very clear kind of goal that the legal sector has already started to work very actively to promote. But there are also a range of goals that factor into the fact that the legal sector has a broader impact on the environment. And of course, legal tech with enabling technologies that can save the use of paper, and you know, also with the need to travel, can also have a carbon footprint on the planet. So there are a range of goals which have not been considered very carefully until hopefully our study has highlighted that the legal sector, through particularly the use of and advancements in technology, can actually achieve that promotes these 17 goals. And we'll go into each goal, not all in detail, but certainly highlight the goals that are most relevant that we found from our survey. So before I go into the findings of the report, and again, these are tentative findings. Over the last 2 months, we have interviewed and surveyed over 100 stakeholders from 30 countries around the world. And these include both developed countries. Majority of our interviewees and survey response have been the UK, but we've also got interviewees from very different parts of the world: Gabon, Kazakhstan, Vietnam. So it's a really great representation of the developed and developing world in terms of you know, representation of the legal sector and the law tech sector in different countries. So we're really excited to present these findings, but they're still tentative because the research is still being undertaken, and we plan to do a few more interviews and extend the survey a little bit longer, just to sort of see whether we can pick up more interesting responses. But I'm going to hand it over now to my colleague, Akshay, who is going to set out why we started this project, you know, why we were sort of inspired by the fintech experience and think that actually sustainability, SDGs, they're something that lawyers do care about. And law tech is certainly a very powerful, has powerful potential to help realize those SDGs. So maybe I'll invite Akshay now to just share some experience and lessons learned from the fintech sector.
Thanks, maybe. Thank you for that. Well, you know, fintech is a cousin of Lawtech, and it's one that, you know, is no stranger to sustainability. And in terms of the kind of policy measures that we have seen from governments and regulators to address issues of sustainability, I would just broadly categorize them in three broad headings. I think the first one is that we have risk management and disclosures pertaining to climate change, which is something that has been picked up in fintech. The second one are broader goals of SDGs that are related to biodiversity, poverty reduction, etc. And lastly, you have measures leading to finance for the future. So those are other goals of SDGs that have been covered in fintech. So broadly, if we look at the first category regarding risk management and disclosures regarding climate change, we have seen that FSB has adopted recommendations, and these have also been adopted by businesses in terms of their ESG reporting. So that's definitely helpful in terms of achieving SDG goals. In terms of the second category, where we're looking at broader goals of SDGs, we have seen there are international agencies such as International Association for Insurance Supervisors who have also come out with their recommendations to cover key concerns of industries. A pertinent example would be the R&D efforts that have been undertaken in the adoption of Lawtech. So these have really helped in furthering SDGs in this sector. I think the third one and the most important one is related to just finance of the future and how the transformation through mobile payment platforms, cloud computing, alternative data, AI, etc., has really helped in transforming SDGs for the future of finance. And broadly in this particular field, we have seen that SDGs have been achieved from something as niche as energy and water as well. And for broadly the in this field, the kind of regulatory and policy responses we have seen is something like EC has an action plan that builds on sustainability benchmarks to reorient capital flows, which is quite interesting. Apart from that, we have the International Finance Corporation, which has set out performance standards that have been actively implemented across this sector to encourage and track compliances. So overall, we have seen a lot of SDGs being really pushed in this sector. And we feel that although Lawtech is really in its nascent stage, however, we really feel that sustainability would be key when we have technology being adopted and completely like disrupting the legal sector. Back to you, Mimi. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, actually. And I think, you know, in a way, the maturity of the fintech sector is more advanced than Lawtech. So perhaps we will see Lawtech embracing the SDGs agenda in the coming years. And that's why we decided that this study hopefully will be, you know, one of the early papers that actually say, look, there is an agenda here that should be adopted by the legal tech ecosystem, as it has been adopted very actively by the fintech ecosystem. So hopefully this is going to be an increasingly important agenda, and our study, and I'll start sharing some preliminary findings now from our study that show that there is enormous potential. Okay, so this slide so there's a few slides that show not all the questions we've asked, but certainly some that would be of interest to this audience. As I've said earlier, we really went out to engage a whole range of stakeholders that are part of the legal tech ecosystem, both in the UK, but internationally. So most of our respondents were law firms. We were very pleased to see that over a third of our survey respondents were law firms. We also reached out to a number of law firms that have at least mentioned something on their website or other promotional materials that they are using technology to achieve sustainability goals. There were also representations from companies, so that's mostly in-house counsel. Now this yellow bar, I'm sorry that the label was not very clear, but the yellow bar, so the third from the top, are companies that specialize in provision of legal tech services and products. So we had about a small number, but I think these companies made some very interesting observations. regarding SDGs and sustainability. Some barristers were also participated, and along with other government, industry bodies, universities, international organizations, and NGOs. So really a real wide range of stakeholders in different parts of the ecosystem that participated in either our interviews or surveys. So also the size of the organizations varied. Predominantly, we had respondents that were of small enterprises, small businesses, less than 10 employees. But again, quite well represented in terms of SMEs and also larger businesses with over 1,000 and even 10,000 employees. So we really did get a very representative in terms of the size of these organizations that participated in our empirical research. Again, we were very pleased to get a diversity of countries. You can see on this graph, we had, really like responses from all parts of the world. And very pleased to see that at least close to about a third would be in the developing world, and which is very important, obviously, from the point of the SDGs. And we're just very pleased that we've got almost every country from every continent represented here. So predominantly, just because obviously of our networks, most of the respondents from the survey and interviews were based in the UK. But this is also where I think the UK can really set leadership in raising awareness of the relationship between Lawtech and SDGs, given that the government is also very proactive in particularly the area of climate change and the advancements in the area of ESGs in the UK. I think this is a real chance for the UK to lead on this. So one of the questions we asked our stakeholders was about which aspects of legal tech that they adopted. And again, it was a mix of responses. We thought maybe there might be a particular aspect of legal tech that were very popular, but more or less our respondents have told us across the range, whether it's contract management, document automation, legal research, e-discovery, e-billing, risk and compliance, ODR, online dispute resolution, and other kind of different types of legal tech services. More or less, you could see from the results that they've embraced a wide range of different types of new technologies. So that's very, very positive to see. And we also in the study looked at drivers of why an organization, whether it's a law firm or in-house counsel or any other organization that has a legal function, why they adopted legal or new technologies. And it's very interesting to note that cost cutting and improving efficiency is certainly the top driver. It's definitely the top driver. And also introducing new ways of working, as well as employee productivity and client and consumer demands are among the top drivers for adopting new technologies. So here, it is about cost, and I think it's very interesting to compare it to then why organizations adopted sustainability policies. And costs here are not as relevant, it's not as important. Obviously some respondents have said, that's a key factor, but really it's about reputation and client and consumer demand. That's a consistent driver in terms of factors driving both adoption of new technologies and sustainable policies. And other respondents have said mitigating risk, and that includes climate-related risk, as well as developing and changing the ways that an organization worked, and of course, employee health and safety. So a mix of different drivers, but reputation by far, 70% of our respondents said that was the main driver for our organization's sustainability policy and also client or consumer demand. So that definitely highlights that external pressures, you know, how an organization looks on the for the outside world is a very important element to consider when trying to certainly promote a agenda around sustainability, particularly SDGs, for the organizations. So in terms of, we asked the respondents to our surveys and interviews what they think sort of the 17 goals, how they're applicable to Lawtech, or how Lawtech could be effective in achieving each goal. We had obviously a range of responses because not all the goals are so obvious, right? So for example, the goal of clean water, or the goal of conserving land, life on land, may not be so obvious in terms of what they're connected to in terms of Lawtech. So the I would say six goals. So from 1 to 10, 1 to 10. So we're looking at the 10s, the goals that have a high 10s or 9s, and that's sort of the you know, goals that have the highest relevance for Lawtech. And we just look at this graph, those that have the highest 9s and 10s, where respondents felt, yeah, you know, Lawtech can really play a big role in achieving its goal. We have goal 5, which is achieving gender equality. We have goal 8, which is promoting decent work. Goal 9, which is about building resilient infrastructure, innovation. And so that's sort of yeah, it's something that we thought, yeah, Lawtech definitely be promoting innovation. Goal 10, which is, sorry, I should remember all these goals in my head. But goal 10 is about reducing inequality, both within and among countries. And then we have goal 16, as I said before, that has been sort of promoted as the main goal that the legal sector can contribute to, which is promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, providing access to justice for all, and building effective, accountable and inclusive institutions at all levels. And finally, goal 17, which is about strengthening the means of implementation and revitalizing global partnerships. So really about working with other stakeholders to achieve these goals. So so goal 5, 8, 9, 10, 16, 17. So there's 6 goals that really received particularly high response in terms of recognizing the potential of Lawtech to achieve those goals. And if we just go a bit closer, I might try and zoom in on those goals, but I'm just going to explore them a bit further in a few minutes. If we start with goal 5, which also received a very high response rate, it's gender equality. And so what we found was that there was respondents that indicated that obviously there are legal tech initiatives that are actually aimed at protecting women's rights. Legal tech obviously can help to improve a work-life balance by perhaps reducing the time that perhaps a legal professional needs to be in the office, and promoting things like virtual working. And as we see during COVID, it has these sort of virtual working with the enabling technologies have really been adopted across the world very quickly. And that has the potential to help with work-life balance. And of course, I think there's a lot more women, I think, in Lawtech than a few years ago. So supporting women entrepreneurship in this area is something that also contributes to goal 5. Now, if we look at goal 8, which is decent work and economic growth, I think there is the potential for Lawtech to improve the quality of work in the legal profession. So those of you who started as junior lawyers 20 years ago, like me, would have remembered all the terrible work that you've had to do, and not all that manual work that used to be done by junior lawyers are obviously now being replaced by various forms of legal tech software. And so if the direction of travel is one towards promoting decent work rather than replacing humans in the legal sector, then I think there is certainly potential to ensure that it's high quality work that lawyers are left with. Of course, it also creates new jobs and entrepreneurships in the sector and outside the sector. So that's also part of Goal 8. And there are also some employment law, labor law rights apps that have been created by, basically to help workers enforce their legal rights. So that's also one way of ensuring that decent work is promoted. So I'll quickly go through Goal 9 is another very important goal that's been recognized by the respondents about basically fostering innovation and building resilient infrastructure. I think certainly it's obvious that Lawtech can foster innovation and entrepreneurship within and also beyond the legal sector. And it also has hopefully positive longer term change on the sector's infrastructure, whether it is physical infrastructure or human capital. So certainly there's a positive role that Lawtech can play in this regard. So Goal 10 is about reducing inequalities. And we do see an increasing range of Lawtech applications that support access to justice, which obviously can reduce inequalities within the justice system and has a wider impact on social inequality as well. And we do see specific initiatives by Lawtech entrepreneurs that are aimed at protecting the rights of disadvantaged groups. So I think there is actually a direct link with Goal 10. Goal 16 is quite obvious, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time speaking about this, but of course, Lawtech has the potential to make legal services more affordable, accessible, and available for everyone. And we are seeing, a growing market for Lawtech for good innovations. It can also, we do see also a legal tech boom in developing countries. I'm going to return to this point about leapfrogging in terms of institution building in developing countries that can be driven by Lawtech shortly. And finally, Goal 17, I think we have to recognize that the legal sector actually has significant influence, and that influence should be leveraged, and that influence should be exercised in partnership with other sectors such as fintech and government, international organizations, so that we do have really this comprehensive approach to realizing SDGs across different sectors. Okay, so I'm going to just basically wrap up this part of the presentation and kind of engage in Q&A with the audience shortly. I just wanted to share a few good quotes from the study so far about the challenges and opportunities of Lawtech for sustainable development. So here we've got a law firm representative from Greece sort of highlighted the changes that have occurred in Lawtech and really indicated the sort of benefits for sustainable development when it comes to creating new jobs, increasing efficiency, productivity and growth, and just a general kind of access to justice, making it easier to access legal services in a cost-effective way. So that's targeting several of the SDGs directly. There's a company based in United Kingdom that's a Lawtech company, and makes a very interesting point about also the risks and challenges. And we know that, Lawtech, especially as it's growing, uses a lot of data. And data centers are not necessarily carbon neutral, although there's been a lot of attempts to make them carbon neutral. So there's obviously an environmental impact here. So as much as Lawtech can also reduce use of paper and reduce the need to travel, but the reality is that data centers, for example, do contribute a lot to carbon emissions. And so I think Lawtech sector has to think of some creative ways to offset the fact that, that this is happening. And so online dispute resolution, I think this company, maybe an ODR company, is saying, we can design systems to be carbon neutral and also increase access to justice. And that will pretty much aid all the SDGs in one way or another. This is a very interesting observation from a Lawtech company in China. And this is the point about leapfrogging for developing countries to really build institutions very quickly. And I think in places like China, you do see online justice very much helping courts deal with tens of millions of cases a year. It's an interesting point to note that developing countries may not have the obstacles of legal legacy systems and already established institutions that we find in many developed countries. So if Lawtech is adopted effectively in developing countries can catch up quickly when it comes to development of institutions and also come up with innovative solutions to tackle the SDGs. And this is notwithstanding resource constraints. So this leapfrogging can happen and is happening at the moment in a number of developing countries. So how should stakeholders in the whole ecosystem incorporate this agenda into real life? So I think there were observations about the need for more concrete steps, things that, just not just concepts, not just goals, but what are the steps that need to be done that you can sign up to as stakeholders? Because the SDGs can be quite lofty, right? I mean, we should be achieving them. They're a blueprint for a better humanity, right? So it's a very lofty kind of goal. But obviously the SDG breaks down into indicators and targets. And, those are fairly concrete indicators and targets. It's going to be hard, obviously, to demonstrate that Lawtech directly impacts on those targets and indicators. But I think there are ways that we can develop concrete actions that the Lawtech community can take that are actionable and feasible that will contribute to the realization of the SDGs. Measuring the impact of the sector is also quite important, and measuring the impact through the lens of SDGs is one that's been suggested by one of our stakeholders, and also incorporating at the board level the missions into the SDGs into the mission and visions of these organizations.